Well, welcome everyone to today's session. The session is called, and it's a small title, but The Future of Sports in Asia Pacific. So as you can imagine, that's a fairly broad topic, which is good because I think one of the key things we want to do today is to talk about all of the developments that are taking place in the sports world that will impact the fitness, health, and wellness industry. And we're seeing a lot of overlap, but I want to, and I'll have our guests take us through some of that today. But that's really one of the key takeaways that I want everyone to have. And what we'll do is we'll go through a series of questions. We'll go really guest by guest with some summary questions at the end, and then to wrap up some of the key takeaways. Because again, all these sessions got to go away with some key things that you can apply back to your business. Yes, and as Blair said, so with Asia Sports Tech, I've been out in the region 25 years, worked in both sports and entertainment, was the first person they hired at the NBA back in 1995, been in the sports industry really since about 89. I'll tell you one thing, I've been here for 5 crises, and here in Hong Kong that is, and this is something like I've never seen before. So anyway, looking forward to the panel. Why don't we take away, Rocky's not on yet, but in terms of order, it'll go Rocky, then it's gonna go Chris, Robb. Take it away, Chris, another just brief intro there, and then before we dive in.
Thanks, Loron.
Yep.
Thanks, Blair. Wonderful to have the opportunity. Thank you. So my background is 35 years in what we call the mass participation industry. So think about Singapore Marathon, big triathlon, cycling events, and so on. 15 years of that in Asia, with coming to Singapore with JP Morgan to launch the JP Morgan Corporate Challenge, and then ultimately the Singapore Marathon. Sold my business to Ironman about 4 years ago, and almost simultaneously founded Mass Participation Asia, as it was at the time, which has now become Mass Participation World, with the idea of fundamentally bringing the various verticals of the industry together, promote collaboration and best practice. And no better time than the present. The one, I mean, there's many positives for me that have come out of this. There's great opportunities, but one of the most amazing things I'm seeing is the level of collaboration that is happening on a global basis, across verticals, across countries. Has been quite amazing, and I think it's going to be one of the great legacies for the industry from this time.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris. And JB? Oh, we're not hearing him. We're hearing him. For some reason, we're not hearing him.
JB, I can't hear you quite. Loron, I'll let you take over.
Okay.
And JB, you might have to.
You may have to reboot.
Reboot or refresh.
I don't know if you can hear us. Yeah, we cannot hear. Maybe he's going to reboot. Okay, so what we can do is dive in. So just as an intro to give people an understanding of some of the things that have been happening, because I think that, with so much, if you're looking at the news media and around sports, you're hearing a lot about, oh, this is happening, and oh, sports aren't really happening. Believe it or not, they're happening, and they've been happening for a while now. What's interesting, and one of the reasons I'm going to hold this up is the mask. Ultimately, we've seen sports take place in Taiwan, both their baseball league and their football league, since it would have been early April, the 11th and the 12th. So they've actually been playing, and in Taiwan baseball, they've actually had spectators in the stands. Korea started playing baseball in May, around May 5th, May 8th, and so they've been actually starting their season. Of course, in all cases with a lot of a real concern around health, of course, lots of testing and things of that nature, which has been key. Then you've got in China, basketball is the CBA is supposed to start this week. And then ultimately Japanese baseball is soon as well, I think this week in a couple of weeks. And then in the region itself, we've seen Australia and New Zealand start to open up, of course. And with New Zealand, Chris was just mentioning 40,000 fans in the stands, and they're fully open. So they've really, if you think about it, all these parts of the world are really ahead in many ways in terms of, controlling the virus or reducing the virus. And that's, yeah, you're there. Okay, good. JB's there, or is that Rocky? JB's there. Okay, good. We'll come back to you. So really what's happened with that is we're seeing, it's opening up. So a way to look at it is in terms of what's happening with the virus and what's the ability to start to at least broadcast the games, and in the case of New Zealand and a bit of Australia, attend the games. So this is how it's going to probably work around the world as people open up. So there's lots happening. I think the key when you look at it from fitness, health, and wellness perspective is how will that continue to impact your markets again as you open up and as restrictions are lifted, and of course people continuing to be vigilant. So I'm not sure if we've got Rocky on yet. Do we see him, Blair? I don't think Rocky's there, but we can come back.
Rocky's able to list these. He's going to be brought online in about 2 minutes, folks.
Okay, so why don't we do this? So JB, why don't we go back and give an introduction to you as well now that you're back?
Yeah. So now briefly, as I said, following Lorenz and Chris Robb, I've only been in the region for about 15 years now. Coming from the finance, private equity, and strategic advisory background, got involved a lot into, when Asia started to acquire a lot of sports properties. So by buying into English Premier League teams, La Liga teams, as well as Italian, starting with football and then moving on to other areas of the business now, starting to see a wider evolution up until last year with takeover of, for example, Esports by Enta, which showed the acceleration of the power of and the need of the Asian consumers and the interest in Asian consumer in fitness, health, wellness, outdoors, and sports in general, moving from the sports IP towards also the consumer goods, so growing the integration of the value chain. And I think it's very interesting because this crisis, and COVID crisis, come at a time where I think the Asian sports ecosystem was starting to grow, and it will allow them to, further accelerate. I believe so, considering, some of the trends we're already seeing that we're going to discuss through this event, from as Chris was saying earlier, from the online to offline to online, the growth in engagement, the learn about how to monetize those, how to grow towards, new business model, and how to be very agile with the way they run their businesses. And in addition to that, we're gonna still have several large events happening in this region that will need to challenge and move very fast with the coming 2021 now Tokyo Olympics, not 2020. I haven't seen the 2021 logo, but I guess there should be one.
We don't know.
And the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. So two mass events in this part of the world that will really focus the attention. So it's gonna be interesting things for us in this part of the world, and will definitely trigger a lot of other opportunities. So look forward to have this and share a few ideas on what we think the future of sports and opportunities are in this part of the world.
Yeah. So, and well put, JB. So from the perspective of, if you think about it, we in Asia has been unique because there's going to be 3 Olympics in a row and 2 world championships in basketball, and as well the Rugby World Cup. So if you look at the ecosystem, it's been growing like crazy at a call it a global event level. But where we've also seen some huge growth, and what we'll do is we'll turn it over to Chris because we're still waiting for Rocky. But really at the mass participation level, we had been seeing record growth. And so, Chris, why don't you take us through a little bit about that, but ultimately where you think it's going to go, and what are some of the things you've taken away from what's happened and in areas like that?
Thanks, Loron. Yeah, certainly. I mean, the mass participation industry, in the last 15, 20 years is probably the best term to use, has exploded across the region. Massive numbers, a lot of focus on China of late, but what I think quite a few people have been overlooking has been India. The growth in India has been enormous. Similar numbers, a couple of thousand big events happening there. Huge numbers of participants, numbers of events, big brands starting to get involved. So from an Indian perspective, Tata obviously as a home brand there, Tata Mumbai Marathon, other brands like Airtel involved in the Delhi Half Marathon, huge growth there. In China, hard to keep track of the number of events that are happening there, but in other markets as well, Thailand is huge. Singapore, I think, was the flag bearer to start with, grew enormously, has probably stabilized a little bit now. Big growth in Indonesia is now starting to take off. Vietnam, huge in Vietnam. I was interviewing, I do a series called The Aid Station. Every day we put out interviews with different people. across the world. And I interviewed the sponsorship manager for Techcombank, which sponsor Ho Chi Minh Marathon. They're in Ironman 70.3. Committed to mass participation as a platform, the opportunity that it presents from an engagement perspective. I think what I'm leading to there is we were starting to see many more local brands getting involved in the local opportunities. In the early stages was more of your big global brands, obviously Standard Chartered, the Singapore Marathon, the KL Marathon, the Bangkok Marathon, Hong Kong Marathon, but more and more local brands, whether they be in finance sectors or other sectors, starting to see the value of the journey that a mass participation event provides. So not necessarily just from the fact of the numbers, but you sign up for a marathon, you sign up for an Ironman, you're often committing to a 6-month program. And I think that's, sometimes the opportunity that's overlooked, this opportunity to really engage with a participant from the moment they sign up to the event and beyond. And we were talking a little bit before we came on air. I think one of the biggest missed opportunities, and we talk about, parallels with the fitness industry, is that ongoing engagement. The model is Loron marathon and broad terms. Most of these things are festivals, but entries for the marathon have opened. Please sign up. Here's some training programs. This is what you need to do on event day. Thanks for coming. Here's your certificate. See you next year. And then there's 6 months of deadly silence and the whole thing happens again. And my sense is that in some ways that possibly happens as well. Strangle to get someone to sign up. They've signed up. You give them a bit of generic, marketing that comes to them, bit of generic engagement, but that opportunity to share this personalized journey from a brand perspective and a holder perspective, I think so many of the that have these events that have been going for years, they're obviously sitting on massive databases of participants that they're barely engaging with or engaging in that manner that I showed you. And then they go off over here and they revenue and trying to acquire new customers when they're not even engaging with the customers they have. And in our industry, we have absolute luxury, which is to quite a few sectors, is that we have the right and the designated participants have access to their data. They have to sign up to participate in an event. So we know who they are, we know where they live, track them, and still we don't do it so well. And I think there's a real opportunity there that has parallels in the fitness industry.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Another question for you. I think we're starting to see more governments get involved. And I think initially it was sort of tied to tourism, but tell us a little bit of, and maybe a bit of health, but tell us what you've seen and what you're seeing moving forward, because I think there could be an opportunity there, but I'd love to hear from you on that.
Look, it's a great point. It's been a bit of a bandwagon that I've been on for a couple of years now, and I think in many ways the industry's got the narrative wrong. We spend a lot of focus on the economic impact is, and undoubtedly there's an economic impact. I think what gets overlooked often is the health and social impact. So, when I talk about health and social, I'm talking about reduced physical health costs, reduced mental health costs, increased productivity, increased community bonding, all the social elements, the level playing field. You line up on the start line of the marathon with the person that makes the tea and delivers the mail to the CEO, to the CFO, and everyone in between, and they all run the same course on the same day. And there's these wonderful opportunities within communities to create this bonding. But I've seen for many years, and as an example, when I ran the Singapore Marathon, I was paying a significant 6-figure sum to the health authorities to provide my medical coverage for the event. So, a grant from one section of government over here, part of it was being taken away over here, and I was taking commercial risk as an entrepreneur in terms of getting, at that stage, 50,000 Singaporeans active, and I'm busy working on some research at the moment with someone out of Australia. We believe that the ripple effect goes 10 deep. So I'm the stone in the water that participates in the marathon, where the research we're doing believes that we're going to be able to extrapolate that to prove that the ripple effect goes 10 deep. And let's say even if it doesn't go as far as 10 deep, let's assume it goes 5 deep and use the Singapore Marathon again as an example. Roughly 10,000 foreign runners coming into Singapore probably an average of 3.5 bed nights per person. That's, tens of millions of dollars worth of economic impact. 40,000 Singaporeans getting active training. Let's say they're impacting positively 5 to 1. That's 200,000 people that are being pretty much directly impacted by that event. In terms of those health and social savings. I think post-COVID there's going to be a massive requirement. One of the things that is starting to be talked about, but I think is still being largely overlooked, is the health impact that we're going to be having, mental health impact. I've just spoken to a friend of mine who went back to Australia. He was in quarantine for 14 days in Australia in a hotel, courtesy of the Australian government, in an internal room. He has not seen sunlight for 14 days. He comes out tomorrow. And there are many of these kind of examples happening all over the world. They might be seeing sunlight, but they're in little apartments. I was talking this morning for the aid station. I interviewed Michelle Taylor, who's the global head of sponsorship for TCS out of New York. She's got 3 daughters. And she said to get the message through about movement to her daughter, she decided to put, she didn't specify which brand, but she put a step counter on the daughter's wrist. And at the end of the day, the daughter had only walked 300 steps. So this is repeating itself all over the world, physical but mental, and us on this panel and many of the people listening all recognize how interlinked these are. So I guess what I'm saying is I think that the opportunity to work with governments, we're starting to work with a couple of governments to really look at setting mass participation as a strategy. So governments to say we are mass participation ready, we embrace mass participation. Does that necessarily, and the message I'm putting is that's not necessarily about handing out a lot of money, but it's about being open and receptive to putting in place the ecosystem that is needed for a mass participation event. A simple permitting system, parks and the like that are well designed. In simple terms, every city has a venue where the Padang in Singapore, Victoria, Hong Kong, where you are, how often do mass participation events happen in those locations? Every weekend or every second weekend or however often they happen. Organizers are trucking in generators, they're trucking in toilets, they're trucking in barricades and all the rest of the infrastructure. From a sustainability perspective, generators pumping diesel fuel into the air. What if, hypothetically, cities say, why don't we build a number of venues that are mass participation ready, that have big enough toilet blocks to take small and medium events? I'm not saying that they will take a Hong Kong marathon or a Singapore marathon, but they are mass participation ready. There's 3-phase power across the venue, which means they don't need to bring in the generators. There's enough barricades to make sense for small to medium-sized businesses. Not meaning that they then increase the cost of those venues to the hirers, but this is government contribution to building an ecosystem, mass participation as a way of life in their cities, to increase health and well-being. And then there's the rest of the ecosystem in terms of all of the suppliers, and that obviously dovetails into the wellness industry, in terms of gyms for training, in terms of, spas and massage and physiotherapists and diet and all that kind of thing. You're contributing to the whole ecosystem by having a venue that's ready. And the final point there is that up until now, and many businesses are going under in this situation because the industry works on a fundamentally broken business model in that many of them are running passion projects. The industry has become very commoditized in terms of pricing for entry fees. They're dependent on sponsorships. They're dependent on government grants. And if I believe that there has to be a government involvement to be able to move this industry to more of a sustainable position, and there has to be a different business model which is more about ongoing engagement, more data-driven sponsorship engagement, and the opportunity to really create those opportunities for brands to understand exactly who it is that they're communicating with, and rights holders facilitating the opportunity for that engagement.
Right. No, that's good. And, clearly you will also see governments wanting to get people back into, as we open market to market, they're also going to want to see people come back into it. So it'll be both an internal thing, but as well pushing externally.
A marketing angle too.
Yeah, it'll be the marketing
promoting
side,
themselves as a place where it's healthy place.
Yeah.
Today it's
That's
very,
true.
very valuable, and that people are healthy, they can do sports, they are not falling apart, and one of the best messages you can have today. And I'll share with you, Chris, some studies that I know on public health issues, and that I've done in some European countries, calculation and studies that has impacted and moved government to reduce actually corporate taxes for investment by companies in events and in anything that has a public health impact, in order to really try to trigger and making those investments coming from also the corporate world, to tell them, okay, have an activity within your companies, build the gyms, build the area where people can park their bicycles, do those things as a company, because this has really impact. And it has really impact on public health. So there is definitely a lot of interesting initiatives that can be put together.
I think we'll see it. I think a big part of it too is that governments have clearly had a lot on their plate, and are just trying to cope with what's been happening and just ensuring safety. So this should be the next stretch. And as we all are in this industry, we should really be looking at how can we actually have voice that, because those are clearly things that can help, which is great. Okay, so let's go to Rocky. So Rocky, I thought it was interesting, very interesting to have you on the panel, because you're involved. The Hong Kong Rugby Union is involved on a variety of levels. You're a federation. You are typically you've got national teams. You've got a regional league, the Global Rapid Rugby that you work with. You have a global event. The Hong Kong Sevens is part of a global tour. You've got a Premier League, which is the national league, and then you've got amateurs, including mini rugby of about 5,000 young kids and another about 5,000 players. So how has this impacted you initially? And then what did the rugby union look to do, and what have you guys changed to look forward and adapt to the current situation? So maybe from the top down. Oh, we can't hear him again. You guys hear him? I'm not getting it. You got him?
No, I can't hear him. Not hearing him. No.
Oh no. Sometimes these things happen. We're not hearing him.
Are you muted, Rocky?
Maybe use the computer built-in microphone.
Yeah, maybe pull the.
You can click at
pull the headphone.
On the little settings at the bottom of the screen. There is a little settings wheel. You can click on it, and then maybe you can choose a different microphone. Maybe you can click built-in or something to see if it can work.
It's odd how this happens on some of these.
Loron and Jean-Baptiste, just to let you know that we can't see. Well, I can't see your pictures.
You can't see us either. Okay, no. That's a good thing. There he is.
I can see everyone.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Rocky.
Excellent.
Take it away, Rocky.
Great. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Finally, not sure if you don't hear my voice that long. So I think for us, having COVID a little bit earlier than everyone else in the world, is good, because it gives us a bit of prep time, and we were fortunate enough to finish our Premiership League for both men and women before we actually head into the event lockdown. So not much we could do, unfortunately, with the event lockdowns across the globe. No sort of international travels, which means then in terms of Global Rapid Rugby, our sort of regional league that we're involved in, the players couldn't travel around. We only managed to play one round, and then obviously our major event, the Hong Kong Sevens, had to be postponed into October, which is a good thing. We're now in a situation where we can still prepare an event. Hopefully, we'll be one of the first global events that we'll host in Hong Kong. Although there are still sort of concerns or restricting factors with international travels, as well as social distancing with major events in Hong Kong at this stage. Although things are relaxing, but I think one good news is given us a lot of time into reviewing how we run events, how we prepare events going forward, and give us a lot more time to prep into the new domestic season, where we are impacting our local fans, the 12,000 local fans that we have, and also also looking at some of the things that we're looking at preparing over the summer. Now, without international travels, kids aren't going on summer holidays. Families aren't going on Christmas. So in terms of engaging with the audience, that's provided us with a lot more opportunity to do so. But in terms of the bigger events, which involves international travel, we are at the mercy of the global lockdown. When things clear up, I think then we are prepared to move forward.
Okay, tell us a little bit about, one of the things that has been pretty important, and you clearly got a national teams and key players there. How have you guys been coping with sort of the distance or the social distancing that was there? Now, I understand you guys just started training again, but you guys were looking at different ways to communicate with those players. Health is clearly, across the whole union itself, health is going to be pretty critical. We've seen this globally. We've seen this, of course, globally with all the different leagues trying to restart. We've seen it in Asia, but tell us a little bit about on the health and fitness side, what you guys have been doing.
Well, I think thanks to technology, I think we're able to keep track on the players. A good time for our professional players to actually nurture their injuries over the season. So our medical team obviously been working closely with the Asian and the world body on the pandemic, on guidelines and rules and so forth. They were able to communicate with the players individually through different sort of technology systems, and provide them while they could go through rehab, as well as giving them training programs that within social distancing rules they were able to conduct themselves during this period. And at the same time, I think in terms of the coaching team, they were able to go through Zoom panels where they could actually, as Chris mentioned, the mental health side of things is so important, to really sort of give a platform for the players to interact and to be able to communicate from a social side of things during the semi-lockdown that we have in Hong Kong.
And you also talked a little bit about, we were discussing this a little bit the other week, you were talking about some of the collaboration between the professional players and people in the fitness industry. So you could take us through a little bit about what was happening there, and also you've done some work also on the esports side.
Yeah, so I think one of the interesting things we've done, one of the biggest surveys, research we've done for rugby in Hong Kong, we've got 12,000 responses to find out why people would start rugby, why people drop out about rugby, a bit of stats from there. And what we found, the number one reason why people would start rugby was for health and fitness. So I think that's a great connection that we have. And with a lot of our long-term corporate partners, HSBC as one of them, obviously with their connection with the national team, we've been able to actually work with a couple of the fitness partners who were also ex-international, now working in the wellness sector, putting together workout wellness videos, which has a bit of connection with both mental health as well as physical health, that they were able to share with the employees as well as the public platform. So our players have been doing quite a bit of that, which is great. Okay. From that side of things, I think we see a phenomenal connection from both the health and wellness side of it, of the industry, and with the sports industry as well.
So sort of some of the crossover that we're hearing about, and definitely something that is growing. I think sometimes people tend to look at, okay, I play this sport or I play that sport, but the whole just overall health and wellness and fitness, the focus on that will continue to grow. Okay, well, thank you, Rocky. That's great. Okay, so JB, we let's talk a little bit more on just kind of what's happening from a digital perspective, in terms of engagement, and we could start with esports in that space, and then what are we seeing across that and some of the changes? Because clearly there's been some huge changes that will impact the fitness, health, and wellness industry from sports, as often is the case. So esports.
Yeah, definitely. That can be a topic when people from, they say, fitness and wellness hear the term esports. Sometimes they are very worried about this, and they're wondering what does that mean, and they are like, no, this is not sports. But I think today people, whether maybe a year ago was a word difficult to hear, people, you see it today as a base for engagement. So when we understand, and I think people have understood that even your older generation, but definitely younger generation needs to be engaged in a much more regular way, much more active, proactive way, as Chris was saying earlier. You cannot give them a 6 months gap between the sign they sign in and the time they come to the events. They won't even remember they signed up for that event if you don't engage them across this period. So and actually they want, it's not even that, is they want to be engaged. If you don't engage them, actually your value gonna drop. Whether that maybe in the past you would say, hey, if I engage too much, I'm worried, people don't want to hear about me for 6 months, they'd rather me be quiet, etc. So I think esports, people have said, okay, what can we do digitally? And naturally, sports IP brands say, okay, I am more sports, like I'm a rugby team, a rugby league, I'm a football, soccer league, I am a Formula One, I am basketball, regular typical sports. Say we're gonna go play our game virtually, which or some of the big property already exist. I know Rocky have done very interesting collaboration with your partner in North America on that front with the MLR.
So I think it was quite interesting, a collaboration with one of the MLR teams, the Rugby United New York. So about a month ago we sort of got in touch, and they've done a round of MLR virtual with the esports game Rugby 20, and then they wanted to do a virtual tour to the other side of the world. So so they reached out to us, and we thought, well, great to play a home and away game. So we made that happen this Monday, actually 8:30. We actually had the live game, and we're having game 2 same time next week. So hopefully this will be a start of something interesting until the real thing comes back on board for us.
Exactly. So what's great is this allow people to create new form of engagement. So this is where we have seen from maybe a more macro stepping back perspective about engagement. So of course the typical sports, let's say FIFA have done their tournaments, each league have done their own tournaments, the La Liga have done their tournaments, the Premier League have done their tournaments with all their players, and a way to use it like in a business that they've not really done, using what we call their KOL and putting them together on an online platform, which this is the businesses that we really see in Asia very typically on Instagram. Usually we're not run by sports people, even if out of the top 10 Instagram superstars, 7 of them are sports stars. People tend to forget about those. The Cristiano Ronaldo, the Messi, and the Neymars are there, and they are engaging, and they are more influencers than you can even imagine. So we have seen all those happening, and it, I think, allow maybe younger generation or people less involved in the physical part of the sport to actually be engaged in it and get drowned and as a funnel to bring back. So instead of people see the negativity of it, saying, hey, why, oh no, they're gonna play video game, no, this is not physical sport, opposing them, is actually make the ecosystem understands that actually it's a funnel, it's a way, a platform to engage, and a platform to monetize, a platform to collect data, a platform to tap older generation, new generation, etc. So we need to look from it from a proactive way. From a pure business way, the amount of data and KPI collected are tremendous. So you can do a lot of interesting things from monetization point of view, from marketing point of view, from all the way in terms of monetization, all the way to live commerce point of view. To resell ticketing, to etc. etc. People are watching and playing the games. The probability of them being engaged with the property is much higher. So you can be very, very, I would say, accurate with your reach. And this, and I think the fitness and wellness industry has things to learn out of that. How those big sports IP, like the Premier League, like Formula One, like even some example on the tennis side, like the Madrid and Mutua Open have done in a super successful way, out of very modern way, and engaging all their stars, and then bringing Rafa Nadal for the first time doing a live stream. He never did in his life. He couldn't even log in, but then when he logged in with Roger, then millions of people were watching because they're just never on this. And it is like, it allowed this engagement, and they have been learning from it too, which is, I think, a very positive way. And I think the mass participation also I've seen is wondering how this will happen. We have seen it a bit on the cycling side, which I think has taken a lot of virtual and has tried. They were already doing this, so it's not completely new. We have seen last year with the Giro stages on Zwift or other platforms on Rugby, and we saw already the merger of virtual and offline to online on sports like cycling, and I think we will see new way to engage, a new way to monetize. But I think, on one side, it has brought, people more online, more digitally, more engaged. And as Rocky was perfectly saying, you have had great success of people creating content, with your sponsors, health and wellness content, educational content, things maybe before it would be a nice to have, but now it was very interesting, very in need, highly, as I say, consumed by your sponsors and your clients and your customer, and actually gives you ideas of what you're gonna provide in the future. And we saw it in another area within sports IP. Usually fitness and wellness are looking at, we have our fitness and wellness KOL. Those are the most famous person on the planet. People are watching their videos. They are each launching their fitness apps. And this was somehow the norm in the past. But through COVID-19, some of the most watched and most retweeted shared video online of physical exercises were the one done by Cristiano Ronaldo. Because everybody knows that he knows how to stay in shape, and he came back even more in shape after that. So it's interesting to see. So this is when I was saying earlier, like some of the business around fitness and wellness that were very in the fitness and wellness box may move outside. Rugby players, unions, sports IP will want to promote themselves as a health and wellness through a health and wellness angle rather than just a game and an entertainment. So there will be a lot of crossover. I believe opportunities definitely for some of the best, but there could be also some risk if you're not proactive enough in looking for the right partnership, as Chris perfectly said and Robbie earlier.
Okay. Oh, very good. Okay, we've got about 5 minutes left here, and if anybody's got any questions, please send them through. But prior to that, what I'd like to get from each person on the panel is just your thoughts what are your, just a quick thought on what do you see the next, let's say 6 to 12 months? Very quick thought in terms of what are some of any additional changes we may see? Or just a statement, what do you think is going to, what feeling you have that's going to happen from that?
I think it's massively exciting times for the mass participation industry. Running numbers, cycling numbers have exploded all over the world. Cycling shops can't keep up. I think we're progressively moving to events coming back. Whether all those people will automatically transfer into wanting to participate in events still remains to be seen. But I think by nature, human beings are gregarious and want to be with each other, and it's been proven out in New Zealand this week. And I don't have the stats, but my gut and Rocky, you would know. But a Blues Hurricanes match in a typical Super Round Robin would be 10 to 15,000, I'm guessing, and they sold out 40,000 people. And I think that's being repeated across society. You see it when beaches are opening, people are coming in, shopping centres. There's this massive pent-up demand. How long that might last once we reopen remains to be seen. And I think, again, we've spoken about it a lot on this call. It's those that have engaged and communicated well in this time that will be able to perpetuate afterwards. And it's probably not too late because we're still a few months away. If you haven't engaged, if you haven't done it in an authentic manner, now's the time to start. And if you have, continue with it, because I just think there's going to be an avalanche of return, and you have that opportunity to nurture those and carry them through if you've got a great strategy.
Yeah, I think one of the things during this pandemic I think has been key is obviously a lot of people are digital out, and how we going forward get to do a combination of how we leverage the digital learnings that we have and move into the new normal where we have live events as well as the digital engagement. So that's because I think until probably early 2021, there might not be a lot of international events happening. So the local events are going to be the key spotlight for us. And then how do we continue to engage the fans outside of your hometown? So when time comes for the international events, then things you'll be in a perfect position to really leverage on all that prep work. So I think that digital world, although everyone's talking about that now, how you leverage that with your brand, how you leverage that on your data engagement, how you leverage that on your fan engagement between now and the international events. I think that's key. And then how you actually run your local events more effectively on a local fan engagement to build your product for a better sustainability going forward. I think that's key as well.
Okay, Chibi.
Yeah, to follow on what Chris and Rocky have said, I will go one step even further. I see and I see it from the investment side, quite a lot of new technology coming up, a platform, and investor very interested in that space because we do work with quite a number of those going towards personalization of the offering. I think for everything today as a customer, as a client, whether you run, as you said, Chris was saying before, it could be someone who plays football, that's going to train for a marathon, that's going to consume XYZ. Today, we need data. And I think people have been more and more open. And through this COVID-19, we know we want to monitor more our health and wellness that go through, of course, our fitness and all the activities we do throughout the year. And they started to have solutions to allow people to power more accurate and personalized solution thanks to data. So I think the data will be allow, like Rocky said, less people to drop out from rugby because they have been monitored better. Then they have been keeping more fit and less injured. So thanks to that, they have been able to engage longer. To go back to Chris' event, if they are followed properly through the year, during their training, at the gym, with their apps, with the digital platform they have, they can participate in more events because they have a better preparation for any kind of events. And injury prevention is going to be a huge topic. So we will see a lot of more people from the health industry and healthcare industry actually really interested in invest in that sector. So if you look at big events around that space, healthcare, investor, brands in that space, and FMCG who are entering from the nutrition space are all going to come into the fitness, wellness, and sports sector. So, Blair, a lot of new brands and a lot of great opportunity to tap in, and a lot of more people want to come in. So,
it's definitely exciting. I'm going to pass over to Loron in a second. I just wanted to say that the panel is going to automatically close because of the way Hopin works. So right now, when we close this panel, you'll have a little bit of a break to go and get some water, go to the toilet. You can also go into networking or expo, and then the closing panel will start at 4:30. Loron, just going to come to you right now. What final sentence would you give as a positive message to the industry as a whole about the industry's future?
Yeah, so in Asia, the one thing that I'd say, Asia is an incredibly resilient and creative place. And I think that we're going to come out of this even stronger with the ability to leapfrog and come up with new business models, new opportunities, and sports will continue to grow as it has on a great trajectory in the region. So I'm excited. And one big message, there's hope, and we're seeing it already. So
perfect.
Great to have everyone here on the panel, and looking forward to continuing any discussions offline as well. So thanks, everybody. Thanks to all our panelists. It was great.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Loron and JB from Asia Sports.
Thank you, everyone.
Chris.
Thank you.
And thank you, Rocky. You can connect with each of these gents on LinkedIn. Also, they'll be in the networking immediately after this if you want to try and hook up with them there one-to-one. They're also available via email. You can ask me for those emails and I will share if you've got further questions. Gentlemen, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.
Rocky and Chris and JB,
Thanks,
one final sentence on the future of the industry, if you don't mind. Rocky?
I think it's going to be exciting. There's going to be a lot of new things happening, technology with live events. I can't wait.
Perfect. JB?
Very excited to all the new things that we know that are cooking in the pipeline and that will come to you hopefully soon, and looking forward to show you those.
Lots of potential. Good. Chris?
A massive opportunity, hugely exciting times. Absolutely going to be amazing, I think.
You're absolutely right, guys. I think we all are very, very pragmatic and very honest about the challenges the industry has faced. You've done a great job, panel, at expressing some of what those are. And Loron, thank you very much again for moderating this session.
No problem.
And really bringing those to light with some of the pertinent questions. We didn't give those to Loron, he's digested them himself. So thank you very much for that. For everyone who's watched and all the audience, thank you very much for participating. Do go into networking now. Do go into the expo for about 15 minutes and then join us in sessions for the closing panel with leaders. Gents, signing off. Thank you all very, very kindly for all of your
Thank you, Blair.
Take care.
Thanks all, panel.
Thanks very much.
Bye.